Hello everybody, you've tuned in to Erekose on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I cover Making a Murderer, Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey. I cover some other cases at times. I go over the documents, the photos, videos, anything case related. Plenty of videos you can check out, just like the one you're about to see. Hello everybody, how you doing today? I'm here today just to talk about a couple different things really. The first thing obviously is going to be OJ. I was watching American crime series, The People versus O.J. Simpson. Very interesting stuff. Obviously, I remember it all when it was happening, but wasn't fully in tune. Didn't sit and watch it every day, but I was, aware of it. I remember how it was. It was like on TV every day, like even the soaps, the soap operas and stuff would get bumped because something important was happening with the O.J. trial, and oh man, it was crazy, that trial, that the attention because of OJ, because of so many things. The first time DNA was really being used in a trial, and just a lot of unique things there. The dream team, the legal dream team, which came from, those of you who may not remember, came from because of the basketball in the Olympics. They had built the basketball dream team where they had like Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan and like Larry Bird, all these guys, all these very famous names, all on the Olympic team, and they called it the Dream Team. And it was this, so that would happen right before this stuff with OJ, and so the Robert Shapiro ended up hiring F. Lee Bailey and the Robert Gershwitz and Johnny Cochran, of course, who we all know. But, so yeah, the legal dream team. I mean, so many unique things about that case. So many things that stood out about it. So many things that garnered attention about it. It was a spectacle. There's no doubt about it. It was a spectacle. And so, yeah. Now, some of you, who don't know, I've done a video about OJ before. It was right when his Lost Confession came out. And I basically, when I heard and saw that Lost Confession, it reminded me of another serial killer documentary that I had watched, and that serial killer happened to be around and in the area, and had reported that he had done some painting and stuff for Nicole Brown Simpson. There was a witness there that saw a truck that matched his that night. This particular guy's name's Glenn Rogers. Anyway, so I did a video where I basically, after listening to OJ talk about what was in that book, If I Did It, I think it was called, or whatever, but hearing him talk and do a walkthrough of the murder scenario, it suddenly became clear to me that, yeah, OJ pretty much definitely did it. I no longer had any doubt really about it. But not only that, is it told me there was another person. He had to have accomplice in this. And now, whether or not it's Glenn Rogers, I don't know. But he had to have an accomplice in this, and here's why. OJ wasn't marked up at all. He didn't have, he wasn't bleeding anywhere except for on his knuckle. Literally, just the one spot on his knuckle, which was apparently a pretty bad cut or whatever, but it was still just one cut, like on his knuckle. Not anywhere else. Now, those of you who may not know, Ron Goldman was actually a bit trained and knew how to handle himself. Ron Goldman put up a hell of a fight. He did not go down, easily. He put up a hell of a fight. He was putting his, they actually have, they've been able to put it together that he was actually putting his keys in between his fingers so that they were sticking out between his, so that when he was punching, he was, potentially, hopefully gouging out and causing severe damage to the person he was protecting himself against. So he was pulling out all the stops, and he was doing anything he could do to cause damage to his attacker. And yet with OJ, all we have is a tiny, tiny little whatever, maybe not so tiny, but whatever it is, it's just after supposedly getting into a fight with Ron Goldman, who very aptly handled himself, and all he has is that. This is why I think there was another person involved. It's and like I said, and if you watch, I'll leave the link to my other video below. You'll kind of see why I think Glenn Rogers kind of fits, but There's other people that believe possibly Jason Simpson, his son, might fit. I'm not here to split hairs. I just, at this point in time, am pretty sure of the fact that there must have been some accomplice, because there's just not enough bleeding on OJ to explain, or to account for the defense that Ron Goldman put up, which was quite stellar and quite significant. He ultimately lost to the knife. The knife was able to do more damage to him than he was able to do to the knife wielder, unfortunately. But he put up a hell of a fight. And so the reason why I keep bringing this up, because like I said, with somebody like him who knew how to handle himself, putting up a fight like that, and all that OJ has is a little bleeding on his knuckle, it could be that OJ took care of Nicole, and then whoever his accomplice was left to deal with Ron. It's just the way it strikes me, because as I said, there's not enough cuts and bleeding and damage on OJ to account for him having engaged Ron Goldman directly. So that's some of the interesting stuff about the OJ case. I also find it very interesting. When I watched the People versus OJ Simpson from the American Crime series, or whatever it is, the first time, and watched the whole bit with F. Lee Bailey and Mark Fuhrman on the stand the first time. And I remember watching that, and I was like, that was interesting, because, you see F. Lee Bailey where he just comes out and he just starts just point blank, like, asking Mark Fuhrman, so have you ever called anybody a nigger? And he's just like, and he just keeps rephrasing it in different ways, and keeps, just going all these different ways, and he's just saying it out in open court. He's unashamed. He's just saying it out in court like that, and asking these questions to Fuhrman. And of course, Fuhrman denies all of them. So it's funny. People were wondering, why in the heck was he so direct like that? People thought like F. Lee Bailey was maybe a little bit, off his rocker or something, like, for acting that way. So I ended up, when I was watching that, I went ahead and I went on YouTube and I typed in, F. Lee Bailey cross-examines Mark Fuhrman. And what happens is you get a bunch of YouTube videos that come up, and they contain the testimony of, or the cross, basically F. Lee Bailey, asking Mark Fuhrman questions. But it's not all together, because sometimes the court goes into recess or whatever, and they cut to other little bits, and they talk about other little things that are happening behind the scene, and stuff like that. It's because it's all like straight taken out of the news feed, or the whatever channel was airing all this stuff back at the time. So when court would go into recess, they would cut to something else and try to tell some little backstory on some other part of this this legal process, or the backstory or whatever. And it's just interesting, because you see that there was the people were talking about it, like, after the like I said, there was a little break or whatever in court. And it cuts away, and you suddenly hear like this panel of legal analysts talking about the cross-examination, and one of them's going like, I don't know what he was doing there. That seemed a little bit, a little bit overboard, or whatever, this or that. And another legal analyst immediately saw exactly what F. Lee Bailey was doing. And so you see this other legal analyst jump in and go, oh, no. I don't know that, everybody's saying that they feel like that Mark Fuhrman came out on top in this. And maybe he did, in a sense. He looks good. F. Lee Bailey brought out the fact that he's an ex-Marine and ex-MP. And he's brought out all these things that make everybody think that Mark Fuhrman's this great guy. But when he asked those questions at the end, folks, and this is what this legal analyst was saying, he goes, but when he asked those questions at the end, he's pinning Mark Fuhrman down. He pins him down with those questions in a way that there's no wiggle room. And if claims end up coming out, or if, proof ends up coming out that Mark Fuhrman does or did use those words, and, with any kind of regularity, then then everything you just saw F. Lee Bailey do is going to be seen as praiseworthy, because he's going to be the one that pinned him down, because he's the one that saw ahead and asked those questions. And eventually we all know that they did find some tapes where you know, a lady was interviewing Mark Fuhrman for a story she was writing about cops or, you know, something or whatever type of thing. And so he was talking about some of the things that him and officers did and had done. And, you know, he just was speaking very candidly and using the N-word quite a bit. And yeah, so it was disturbing. But as soon as that came into court, that's when you saw Mark Fuhrman come back into court just pleading the fifth, no matter what they asked. And so that led Johnny Cochran to say, "Did you plant any evidence or blood or anything in the Simpson case?" To which Mark Fuhrman says, "I plead the fifth," which then, you know, the jury sees him pleading the fifth to that, and that you know, so it's, I mean, watching the legal back and forth and stuff in these cases is kind of some of the interesting bit. And like I said, going in on YouTube and looking and actually pulling up the actual, you know, cross-examination by F. Lee Bailey of Mark Fuhrman, and then going, you know, and then looking up the one for the end of trial when they bring Mark Fuhrman back in after they find those tapes, and then, you know, you get Johnny Cochran re-cross-examining Mark Fuhrman again after getting those tapes and stuff. I mean, just, you see that it's just, I mean, the whole legal process, it's like maneuvers. Just, you know, one side's always working against the other's maneuvers. And, you know, it's very interesting, you know, kind of to watch. And with the OJ case, the interesting part is that we have so much footage of it, around it and everything. It's just really super. It's really possible to just go into very, very deep research on it and look at all the things that went on in and around it and because of it. And so there's just a lot to analyze. And those people that are into true crime, such as, you know, most of the people here watching my channel, and me, of course, find it, you know, can find it somewhat fascinating. So anybody that has that interest in the OJ case, that has never done it, do it. Go on YouTube, go into your search bar and type in, like, you know, OJ Simpson, you know, cross-examination of, you know, Kato Kalin, or whatever person in the case that you might have interest in, watching them on the stand or whatever. Yeah, do it. It's fun. I mean, you get, and like I said, because you get to see, you know, because the newscasts that were airing it, you know, basically as a live feed, would cut in every once in a while, like when there would be a recess or there would be whatever, some lull or whatever, for whatever reason, and then they would cut into some other things with like legal analysts and things like that. And there's just so much information that's just there. It's because somebody recorded it back then, and then when YouTube came along, they've uploaded it to YouTube, and just all that information is there to be just absorbed if you're so inclined. So I would, if you have an interest in the OJ case, I would suggest, you know, trying that out, because like I said, I had a lot of fun looking into the whole F. Lee Bailey, Mark Fuhrman thing. Now, as I've said, I mean, as I think I made it pretty clear, I do think OJ did it. I just think that he had an accomplice. I think the accomplice could be Glenn Rogers. Like I said, check the link below in the info below. I think it could be Glenn Rogers. Some people favor Jason Simpson, which I think there's a case for that. I mean, from the things that I've watched and seen and read, there's certainly a case to be made. Jason could have certainly been wanting to, you know, could have been seeking his father's approval in some ways, and just, I mean, the case that's made, it's plausible. It's not completely kooky. So, you know, it's interesting, really interesting with OJ. I think I'm going to probably be revisiting OJ pretty soon with a video dedicated directly to something in regards to the OJ case. But yeah, I was watching the People versus OJ Simpson this weekend. It's just interesting stuff. So I wanted to, you know, get on a video and give other people a chance to talk about it in the comment section below, along with my next topic, which is the Scott Davis case. Alright, so now we'll talk about the Scott Davis case. You know, I know that some people, you know, I can tell that, you know, a lot of the people on my channel, when they see the Scott Davis videos, they aren't too excited. I understand, I get it, but it's something I'm kind of passionate about. And it was recently featured on a show on Investigation Discovery called Reasonable Doubt, where it's this former detective, Chris Chris, I can't remember his name, and then this former defense attorney, Fatima, something, I can't remember her last name either. But they're on this show together, and they go and investigate for families that feel that their family member has been wrongly convicted. They go and look into it and see if there is reasonable doubt and stuff. So they came in and they went and looked into Scott's case, and it was just unfortunate because they asked for 5 leads. Now, the first 3 leads worked out like phenomenally, perfectly in Scott Davis's favor, as we've all been claiming for a long time. He could not have burned the Porsche. It was not a remote detonation. There's no way it was a remote detonation because of the way that the pattern of the fire would have been very much different. So there's a lot of things. Anyway, the first 3, let's talk about what they are. Then we got the fact that Megan, his wife / ex-wife, they were going through the divorce at the time, had the knowledge that David Coffin had been shot. The victim, David Coffin, had been shot while his body was still in a burning house. She knew that. And they proved that she had that knowledge before anybody else. Fatima and Chris proved that in the show. Then they ended up showing how the Atlanta Police Department, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, the Fulton County Fire Department, I believe it is, and some other agencies, how they just lost. Like, it ended up being about 50 pieces of evidence. Ultimately, they ended up finding about 20 pieces of it because it was originally 72 pieces of evidence that were lost. And among these pieces of evidence, you have the blood that they believed to be the killer's blood. The fingerprints off of the Porsche, neither of these things matched Scott, and that's why they were filed and were able to get lost. Filed away again and were able to get lost. Nobody ran them. Nobody put the prints through AFIS. Nobody put the DNA through the national database to see if there would be a match. Nobody did any of those things, and then they got lost. And there's a lot of things, and it's 50 pieces. And even Fatima was just like, oh yeah, that's shocking. That's absolutely shocking that this case could have even been brought to trial without that evidence. The due process issue there is huge. It's absolutely, she was shocked. Okay, so you see these 3 leads pan out. Then there was the final 2 leads of the fact that the number one, Scott says that he wasn't that he wasn't like crazy about Megan. He was getting over it and whatever. They ended up bringing up a bunch of stuff that he wrote that when he was still in love with her, and they ended up, he wrote some really, strongly worded things and things that, he obviously would regret later, but he was, saying things that lots of people say when they're angry or hurt. You know what I mean? And they somehow honed in on that and said, oh yeah, this proves that he's guilty. And then also the fact that he was attacked that day. The proof of it was never picked up by the police, has been Scott's claim. There was a piece of clothing from when the person tried to jump over his back fence. He was asking if that had gotten picked up from the word go when they were taking him down to the police station to question him the first night, and he was asking about all that. That all has apparently, it was never, like a lot of the other pieces of evidence here, it was never collected or something, or maybe it was, but it was lost because they didn't want anything that might point away from Scott, because they pretty much decided they were going after Scott on this like that. And it's just amazing, especially when you consider they find out that night when they're interrogating Scott, because Megan told him about David Coffin being shot in the head, once again, while David Coffin's body is still burning in a fire. She told Scott that. While they're grilling Scott, he eventually just tells them, he goes, look guys, I didn't shoot him. And so Rick Chambers gets all like, oh my God, what? Huh? We don't even know that. He goes outside and asks around and finds out. He asks Megan, who denies it, who denies saying it, but then goes over to David Coffin's best friend, Craig Foster, and asks him, and Craig Foster, the victim's friend, right, who has no reason to protect Scott, and asks him, and he says, yes, I did hear Megan say something along those lines about David being shot, because him and his girlfriend were nearby. And there's also the call that Megan made to her own friend, Jennifer, and her boyfriend at the time, where she was talking about David being shot or shot in the head while his body was still in the burning fire in the house. And then, so this is, and so, you know, this show, Reasonable Doubt, has now got me wondering, you know, like, how serious are you guys about trying to help the wrongly convicted? Because you just like proved most of the things that we've been screaming about, going, this isn't right. There's no way Scott could have done this. I have a drive time video that it would have been impossible for him to drive from his work over to where the Porsche was and burn it and get back to work. And it has to happen in a very short window, because there's people at his work that saw him and were dealing with him that can account for the fact that he was there and they were in meetings with him and they were whatever. So there's like this tiny, tiny little window of time where he could have left to go do the Porsche. And they ended up proving that that's impossible, could have been him. They ended up proving, I mean, everything that they proved in this episode, and then they ended up just kind of letting it slip because they felt, when they looked at the last two things, that, you know, that swayed them. I was just like, oh, how could you allow that to sway you when you just realized all the evidence that was lost, the fact that his ex-wife Megan had the guilty knowledge about David being shot when he was still in a burning fire. And you can look at all these things and you can say, nothing to see here. I'm like, after watching the show, I was just like, maybe I'll watch a few more of these and give this show a chance. But I'll tell you what, because I've been, you know, interested in the Scott Davis case for a while now, and I just, when I saw the way that this show, you know, after everything that they proved, after everything went so well, they just ended up kind of like, okay, nah, we're not gonna help. And it was just like, I was just like, wow. But I mean, I'll tell you what, Megan, Scott's ex-wife, I mean, she has some issues in her. Trust me, because she's blocked one of my videos. Okay, she lives in Australia now, folks. Australia, 20 some odd hour flight from the closest place in the United States, really, right? She's in Australia now. She got one of my videos blocked in Australia. One of my videos called The Dishonest Nature of Megan Bruton. Okay? Got my video blocked. That tells me she has some guilt. And she should, because she's the one that was passing around this knowledge about David being shot while his body was still in a fire. Right? I mean, anyway, so that's why, one of the main reasons why I have so much passion for the Scott Davis case. I'll leave you guys links to a couple videos below. The drive time video that proves that he would not have had enough time to get from his office building to burn the Porsche, as the prosecution claims that he did. And I'll leave you the most recent video I did about it, about the investigation discovery show Reasonable Doubt that like feigned attempting to help out the Davis family. Anyway, so I'll leave those below. So yeah, the Scott Davis case is one of the cases that I care about. But now I want to talk a little bit about the staircase, because obviously I've been watching and researching a little bit about that recently. Some of you saw recently that I put up a video where I was comparing another scene of an accident of a stair fall and comparing it side by side with the Peterson staircase and how similar they look. And clearly the accidental one, there was no foul play or anything like that, and it's very eerie how similar they look. All right, so when it comes to the staircase and Michael Peterson, I'm not sure everybody understands my point of view from the last few videos I've made about it. The way I really feel about it is Michael Peterson had a lot of reason to bet he would benefit greatly from Kathleen Peterson dying from an accident. He stood to gain a lot. which creates a motive. There is the issue of some of the injuries to Kathleen Peterson, particularly the apparent throat crushing that they're saying is from strangulation. Now, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. I'm personally keeping an open mind because I'm wondering if during a fall like that, if the neck got compressed, if it could cause bruising. I mean, for me, I'm just wondering if there's possibly other explanations. But the fact of the matter is the nature of these injuries is very, very superficial. Literally kind of just skin deep. Now, they are nasty gashes on the back of her head and stuff, but they're literally skin deep. There's no fractures to the skull, and there's no damage to the brain tissue underneath, which makes it laughable that it was called blunt force trauma. It's a lot of these things that make it hard to believe what the state says. Just, like that. Right? Or Durham. It's hard to believe what their medical examiner says. Because we already know that watching Staircase, that she ended up writing a note and everything and saying that she never really wanted to say blunt force trauma. That her head medical examiner or whatever basically kind of applied some pressure to basically asserted his will, I guess, and got her to say that. But she wrote a note eventually saying that she never really wanted to say that in the first place. See, these are the things that make you go, okay, well, can I trust anything coming out of Durham at that point? Yes, I agree. There's a lot of reason here to suspect Michael Peterson. And by no means am I saying by no means am I saying there's no reason to suspect him. I think there's plenty of reason to. When it comes down to it, I'm still trying to eliminate reasonable doubt. And I know a lot of people keep saying, oh yeah, what about this? What about that? What about that? Yeah, I see those things. Okay? And they matter. They matter. I'm not saying they don't. But here's the thing. I need to understand what happens in Staircase Falls and what kind of injuries tend to happen. That's something I'm planning to look into myself, because at this point, that's what I need to know. If I, as a juror, in order to convict here, need to understand how those injuries happened to Kathleen, and the blow poke didn't do it. Okay? The blow poke didn't do it. So for me, as a juror, to convict in this case, and that's why I'm still kind of looking into it, to get a grip on how those kind of injuries happen, how, if it's possible they happen in Staircase Falls. I've already found one Staircase Fall that looks very similar to the Peterson staircase. So, I mean, I'm going to continue to kind of look under those rocks and see if I can find more evidence of what happens in Staircase Falls. Hopefully, maybe even get some accompanying, forensic, at least diagrams of the injuries that happened to some of the people in these falls. That's kind of something I'm looking to hopefully do. Because when it comes to the staircase, that's my last remaining thing. If I can figure out how those kind of injuries happen, and if those kind of injuries happen more likely from foul play, then I'm going to be pretty much on the point of saying, yes, Michael Peterson did it. But if those injuries are more likely caused by something accidental, then I'm probably going to be leaning towards Michael's innocence. Whichever way I end up leaning, I don't know that I'll ever be certain either way. But as it is right now, yeah, I believe it's very likely he could be guilty. He's got a lot of reason, that Kathleen's accidental death would have been good for him. He would have gained quite a bit from that. And then, it's odd, the circumstances. It was just him and her there. How did he not find her, sooner? I mean, there's just a lot of questions that come up that are, valid questions. And it does look suspicious. And his manner, the way that he acts during the documentary, it kind of made me I just thought he was a little odd and everything. I couldn't say that I really thought it meant he was guilty, but I just found the way that he acted in reaction to certain things and stuff just kind of didn't really sit well with me. And you know, even though a lot of people say, oh yeah, it's a biased documentary, yeah, well, so was Making a Murderer. And after I got done watching Making a Murderer, I was not convinced of Stephen's innocence. I was not. That came about 6 months later, after 6 months of going through documents and continuing to find thing after thing after thing where the investigation was a complete farce, when I finally was able to go, you know what, I think Stephen did get wrongly convicted a second time. I think actually lightning did strike twice here. And so it took me a long time to get there. And, you know, and I still to this day get people that tell me I was duped by a documentary in the Making a Murderer, you know, arena. So that's fine. I know there's a lot of people out there that have highly charged opinions about the staircase. They've been commenting on my videos already. So, and that's fine. I mean, hey, I love it when everybody has their passion and has something interesting to say. I mean, I some of the people that come in there, they offer a podcast or something interesting that I can go listen to and learn a little bit more about the case and get a little bit more informed. So that's just part of the process. So. All right, moving on from the staircase now, we're just going to talk a little bit about what's coming in the future. Basically, it's going to be me looking for a lot of cases that are similar to Brendan's. You may have noticed I started a thread of videos where it says WCOY, where that's wrongful convictions of youth. Those are going to be the line of videos that are going to be showing cases that are like Brendan's, where there was police doing things they shouldn't, prosecutors doing things they shouldn't, whatever. So I'm going to be doing those series, and they will be, you'll know them when they come out on my channel, because they'll say capital W, capital C, lowercase o, and then capital Y. And that's basically wrongful convictions of youth. And that's what those stand for. So those are the videos that are going to be talking about the cases that parallel Brendan. And I'm going to be talking about as many of them as I can. I'm going to continue to put them up so that people realize that this is happening at an alarming rate out in our country. And there's just an endless stream of these. That's the idea of what I hope to be doing with it. And I hope everybody will start to support those. I know that the first one did kind of you know, but I hope everybody will see the importance behind them eventually and support them and get out there and share them and make people aware of what's going on with youth in our current criminal justice system, and how scary it is, and it really seriously needs to be addressed. And we all know that SCOTUS dropped the ball big time and missed an opportunity recently when Brendan was petitioning the Supreme Court of the United States. They missed a big opportunity to try to start setting things right. And so hopefully it's going to be up to us, the people, you know, we the people. We got to keep talking about it. We got to, you know, never let the conversation about Brendan die down. And we also got to keep the chatter up about these other cases that are very similar to Brendan's, and keep that conversation going and keep that chatter up so that it's never ever gone. And it's, you know, the agents of Wisconsin are going to always have to deal with the fact that there's a buzz out there, and that Brendan, and at the heart of that buzz is Brendan Dassey. And so that's the idea. So I hope everybody can hopefully get on board with that and help me and share those videos when I make them, because we, you know, we need to look out for the youth in our criminal justice system right now. It's a sad state of affairs really right now. With what cops and prosecutors are doing, going after these mentally limited or mentally, you know, these limited juveniles and coercing them and whatever, because they're too lazy to try and go figure out the actual criminals, or to go through the trouble of building a case against the actual criminals. It's just easier to coerce this poor, you know, limited kid and just send him down the river for it. That's what it's like in a lot of these. It's really sad when you see that these cops are targeting these kids and take them in and then just browbeat them and browbeat them and browbeat them until these kids say what they want them to say and basically admit to a crime they didn't commit. And then there's all kinds of evidence that clearly points to the suspects who the officers are ignoring. I mean, it's just such a train wreck. I'll leave you the link to my first one about Corey Williams. I'll leave that link down in the info below as well. So Just wanted to talk about those few things tonight, folks. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you.